Welcome back. The next thing that we want to do is to get the location of the user and then actually get it as a readable location. So we can of course get the latitude and longitude, and we could populate this text field here with those two numbers, but it's not really something that the user can read, right? So it makes a lot more sense to have a readable location. And what we're going to use for this is going to be the fused location provider. It's not going to be specifically for this, but we are also going to use the fused location provider, okay? And the fused location provider allows us to get a pretty precise location of the user. And what it does is it takes advantage of signals provided by multiple sensors in the device to determine the device's location. So it can be something like the signal, it can be the GPS and so forth. And it will be a very efficient way because Google just does that very well here. They optimize this process, and that's exactly what we're going to use. You can see it also takes Wi-Fi into consideration because they just know where Wi-Fi's are. So if you walk past the Wi-Fi connection and they know it's a very strong connection, then they will know, okay, you're very close to the location of this Wi-Fi. And then we can get a very good location or very precise location based on this information. So now let's go back to our application. And in order to use the location in the most efficient way, what we need to do is we need to go to our Gradle and add another dependency. So let's add another dependency here, which will be the Place Services location. So you can see we're using multiple Google implementations here. You can see material, GMS, libraries, and then here Place Services maps and location. So pretty good stuff. And as you can see, we already implemented quite some different dependencies here, which extended the functionality of our app. And that is generally what you will do when you build your own projects in the future. So that is a very common and also very important approach here. So now that we have set that up, we can go back to our Add Happy Place activity, because that's where we add the happy place and also where we get the location of the user. So first of all, we will need a new variable in here, and I'm just going to create it up here. It's going to be a late init variable. So private late init var, which I'm going to call mFused location client, and it will be of type fused location provider client. Pretty long name here, but as it's a late init, we're going to initialize it later on. And here, of course, it's good if you write it correctly. Now in the onCreate, we can go ahead and initialize this variable. So I'm just going to initialize it up here. I'm going to say that it should be location services dot get fused location provider client. And you can see here, this one requires an activity context. So I'm just going to say this. So it's going to use this activity, which is our Add Happy Place activity, as the context for this fused location provider client. Now we need a method that will allow us to get the location of the user. So let's create one, and I'm just gonna create it here, and I'm going to call this one private fun request new location data. And what I want to do here is, of course, to request the new location of the user. And therefore, coming back to this fused location provider API, you can see that we have different common location scenarios here: the last known location, then the location settings, and location updates. So I want to look at location settings here. As in location settings, I will find information about how to get the location of the user. So create location request, that's how you can create one. And you can see we create a location request, which has a certain interval, then a certain priority, and so forth. So we're going to do it similarly to what we see here, but regarding the priorities, what you can see here, there are multiple different priorities that you can set. So high accuracy, for example, is the one to get the highest or the precisest location possible. All right, it's going to need a little more power, of course, but You can see there are other options as well. Priority low power, using this setting to request city level precision, which is an accuracy of approximately 10 kilometers. So it's not going to give you the most precise location, but it's going to require very little power. So really it depends on what your application needs, that you should consider which ones to use here. You can of course also use a balanced version, which will be roughly 100 meters precise. So in many cases this will be good enough, but if you want to have the super precise location, for example with such a Happy Places app, then using the high accuracy will be the best priority. And then regarding the update interval, well, you can set up an interval for how often you want to use this. So should it happen every minute or should it happen every milliseconds? As you can see, this method sets the fastest rate in milliseconds at which your app can handle location updates. And in general, I would recommend to check out location request in the documentation, as you can find all of the variables that we're going to use here. So for example, the interval, then the fastest interval, also the priority, and also the num of updates. So the amount of updates that we get, so that we request, so to speak. So how does it have to do with this function? Well, the thing is, what I want to do in here, I want to create a new location request. So let's create a var location request, which will be of type location request. So we're creating this object here, location request, and then we can assign certain values to it. So location request, we need to import that, and now we can define the different parameters of the location request. All right, so location request dot priority, for example. Now I can set the priority to location, and here location request dot priority, and you can see here are the different options. For example, high accuracy is the one that I'm going to use in this case. So I want to have a high accuracy location of the user. The thing that you need to consider here is that I'm not using this request all the time. So I'm just going to do it once when the user presses the button, and I'm not requesting his location all the time because, for example, I'm not using a app such as Pokemon Go where the user needs to send his location permanently, or not, well, pretty much every millisecond or every several milliseconds or whatever, and this eats up a lot of energy, so, or battery, and in this case we're not doing that because we're really just requesting it when the user presses the button. Then another setting for our location request was the interval. So every how many milliseconds do I want to run this, and I'm just gonna assign 1,000 here, even though as I said I will just use it once. So I'm just gonna get the location once. Then I'm gonna set the location request a num of updates, and I just want to have one update. And that is just a location request, but of course we wanted to have at the very top, we created this variable fused location client, and I want to assign that one. So let's assign it with this location request that we've prepared. And now we can use our mfused location client to request the location updates. And here we need to pass in our location request that we prepared, a location callback, and a looper, which is going to be looper my looper. Now this location callback is something that we haven't prepared yet. So we need to create a variable which will take care of that. So I'm going to create it as such because it's a little more complicated than just a variable. So private val mLocation callback will be a new object. So object location callback. Now when you use a location callback, you need to implement it. So I need to implement its function, which is the onLocation result. So here you can see onLocation availability and onLocation result, and I will override this onLocation result. So what I want to do in there is I want to get the last location m last location, which will be a location, which will take the location result, which is this P0, and I don't like the name, so I'm going to recall this or rename this location result. So our location result dot last location. So I'm going to get the last location here. And at this point, what we can do is, first of all, import our location, of course, as it's still complaining here. And then the location result is a nullable. As we can see here, there's a question mark. So we get the last location. And then we can assign our latitude, which will be m last location dot latitude, and the longitude, so m longitude, which will be m last location dot longitude, which are of course those two variables that we created quite early in the project. So you can see latitude and longitude, which are two doubles where we just assigned 0.0 to both of them. All right, so I'm still getting this error, and there's one other thing. The request new location data, it requires something that we have set up here in our onCreate. So this mFused location client. So you can either assign it in the onCreate, or you can actually assign it inside of this request new location data. Both ways would be fine. And at this point, you can see we still get this little error here, but it's not really an error. So it says that we need to check the permission of the user. But the thing is, before we even request the new location data, we will already have checked for permission. So what we can do here is we can suppress that error here. We can say suppress lint and then missing permission. So we just suppress this missing permission that it is complaining about. And we need to import suppress lint therefore. So let's do that real quick. And the error disappears. Now, of course, we need to make sure that this method is only called at the moment when we already have the location permission. So what would be a good spot to do that? Well, when the user presses the set location button. So here, ET location, TV, select current location. So in here, in our else block, instead of displaying this text here, this make text with the toast, location permission is granted, we can request new location data. Because at that point we will have permissions and we can use the location of the user. Unfortunately, however, we don't have a option to actually get the user's location displayed yet, so I think logging it is a good choice. So log I is going to be current latitude will be the message m.latitude, and then the same for the longitude. So here current longitude will be m.longitude. All right, at this point let's test it, because maybe this interval needs to be changed, but let's see if it's going to work like this already. All right, so let's press this little button here, select current location, let's go to the loghead and let's search for latitude, and we can see current latitude. Then let's search for longitude, and it says current longitude. So let's click it again just to see if it's going to work again, and you can see now we have two entries here. All right, so now we get the latitude and longitude, and what is left to do is to make sense out of those two values, because no one can understand that. Well, of course there are some people, but no normal person will know where the latitude and longitude precisely are, but humanly readable addresses are what we need. So that's what we're going to implement in the next video. And by the way, you could assign an interval of 0 here as well, because we only have one update. So here it wouldn't be performance relevant, so to speak, But if you want to repeatedly request the location, then you really have to think about what value you want to enter here, because this is in milliseconds. So 1000 will be 1 second. So that's something that I think I didn't explain in particular. All right, so I'd say let's go over to the next video where we are going to finalize the application. So see you there.